start recording again. Okay. So today we're kind of going to go over the first survey responses and just like get feedback on that. And basically the goal will be to see if the group feels like if the areas of need that we outlined and that the responses we got back from the community are sufficient enough to move forward with those being areas of need for legislation. And if so, then we can get started on that legislative drafting process. So I sent out an email with the actual survey with all the responses. And then I also sent out a Google Doc sheet that gave the percentages. And so if we're looking at that in order of response rates, like agreement response rates, we got infrastructure coming in at number 1 in agreement. So the community agreed the most with infrastructure. Funding and markets and distribution tied for 2nd and 3rd place with the highest response agreements. The 4th place was education, outreach, and advocacy, followed by workforce development, resource regeneration and protection, invasive species, threats and pests, then agency coordination, research and development came after that. Policy and regulation assistance was after research and development. And then the last 3 were contracts and procurement, transportation, theft, vandalism, and liability in those orders. We didn't get below, I think, a 70% agreement rate on any of these, which is actually really incredible, considering that we have over 320, or we have 327 responses as of right now. So I just kind of wanted to leave the floor open to go over the responses, and we can just go down the line. If anybody went through the responses from the community feedback, each question also had an area for the community to comment, suggestion, question, or make a comment. So did you guys find anything in those suggestions, comments, or concerns that would make us question or rethink the original definitions we put out for these areas of need? So I'll just start off with infrastructure. Does anybody have any comments on infrastructure that we should, take into consideration to relook at that one?
Is it possible to put up what we looked at?
Yes.
As a refresher.
It's going to take me a second to get there, but
okay, thank you.
Sorry. Okay. Okay, so this was the infrastructure. And were you wanting to look at the responses or the actual definition?
Well, you're asking if there are any responses we found troubling. Is that what you ask us?
Yeah, if there's anything that you found in the responses, comments, or suggestions that would make us want to address the definition that we put forward for infrastructure. Does that make sense? So I can, I'm going to pull up the survey. We can see the original definition of infrastructure.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so improving access to and availability of affordable land, water, including storage, meters, delivery systems and prioritization, labor, workforce housing, equipment, commercial kitchens, processing and distribution facilities, and transportation, working to increase community co-ops, technology, access to locally grown food for our residents, while also protecting subsistence farming. Was there any comments, suggestions, or concerns that were brought to your attention in the comments or feedback section for infrastructure? Or are we okay to say, yes, this is absolutely a priority, an area of need, and this one is okay and we can move forward with, I think it was like 93% agreement rate?
It's a critical area. That's
Okay.
great.
Okay.
The comments and concerns, I think align with the definition you have provided, and it would be so great if we could show these long form answers to the department once it's established, because these have really, I mean, folks who contributed great ideas. So I hope we can capture them and use it forward, but I think they all support the definition.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything that we're doing in this group, even like the messy Google Sheets and Google Docs, I'm saving all of it so that I can hand that to the department so that they have all this information and work to pull from to see where we, came from. And I also want to have it available. So once this stuff does go to the county council, we can show like, this wasn't just something that we made up. This was something that we all worked together on. This was something we put to the community. And, even in the comments and concerns and suggestions, we're getting the same kind of responses. So yes, I completely agree. Okay, so the next one was markets and distribution. So the definition that we put forward for that was develop programs to increase access to local products, work to increase marketing assistance and distribution channels on each island separately, as well as inter-island, develop institutional purchasing and distribution channels, including the Hawaii Department of Education, collaborate with local community organizations and government agencies to increase access and availability of locally grown products, locally made ag products, and monetary assistance, i.e. SNAP, EBT, etc., in order to increase food security and overall county sustainability. So this actually came in tied with funding at second or third place. And then I also went through the comments for the top 3 priorities. That was that question that we asked for the top 3 priorities. And actually infrastructure came in with the most suggestions on top 3 priorities. And then markets and distribution came in tied with funding again in like 5th, 6th place in those comments. So did anybody have any feedback on markets and distribution, comments, suggestions, concerns that would make us want to reevaluate this definition that we put out? Okay, so move to the next one. Funding. So secure federal and state funding, develop special funds and revolving funds to go directly towards agriculture, provide grants and funding to ag-related businesses in Maui County, provide grant writing assistance to agricultural related businesses, organizations, community projects, and needs. Did anybody have any comments, suggestions, concerns that we should address? I'm seeing 2 ands right at the end. That's the only thing I see.
Jen, this is Micah. I would just say you probably want to secure county funding too. Even though you're a department, it's still sometimes hard to secure county funding as well. I would even, I mean, I don't know if it's a possibility to also consider private funding.
Yeah, there is with grant writing that could secure private funding. The grant writing efforts would be able to secure private funding. Do you guys want to specify county and private funding in this? So I know that during the budget process, because it's a department, each year they will have an opportunity to secure county funds. They will just need to show the need. That's automatic, that every year the department would get a chance to secure county funding. And then we did put in the develop special funds and revolving funds. So those special funds and revolving funds would be at the county level. We didn't clarify that, so we could. What do you guys think?
Hi, Jen. This is Jerry.
Hi.
Yeah, I think you should clarify and make it explicit that there would be something to work to get county funds, because some of the federal funding is contingent upon having funding, matching funds from the county. And some of the things here, like grant writing assistance to ag-related businesses, organizations, and community projects and needs, it's not explicit, say, for example, to have a grant writer that would assist, say, the administration in working on a grant, say, to the Economic Development Administration, which is federal, for something like compost. So that wouldn't be helping an individual business per se, that'd be helping Maui County develop greater capacity to support agriculture.
Okay. So we would need to clarify not just ag-related businesses, but regular businesses?
Well, I think secure federal, state, and county funding
Mm-hmm.
would be, that would be the first
Okay.
step in modifying that a little bit.
Okay, so it doesn't say county specifically, but right after that, before the grant writing assistance, it says provide grants and funding to ag-related businesses in Maui County. So that would be the department actually providing grants and funding. So should we clarify that, and should we provide county grants and funding?
Just for clarification, I have as in your experience, and this year was, in the last couple of years were pretty good experiences. They took some money away from the tourist board and bureau and gave it to agriculture.
Mhm.
Now, is that something that in the budget that you'll expect the Department of Ag to be managing in the future, that those kind of asks, that kind of direction?
Yeah, so they would be responsible for providing grants and funding, and also securing funding from federal and state levels. The department would also be tasked, if we put this in, with developing special funds and revolving funds. So that means special funds could be any type of like costs associated with doing business with the department could go directly into creating like agricultural specific funds to fund projects or needs within the community. And then you can also develop revolving funds. So those are funds that you can put out, and then as you gain interest back or things, you would just keep putting it into this fund that you could continue to develop
Right.
needs. So
Well,
the second,
I
after,
agree.
sorry, go ahead.
I agree with Jerry's idea. We could even start with federal, state, and county funds,
Okay,
just to make it really, really clear, because you know how it gets when it's not.
so do we
Yes.
want to say secure federal, state, county, and private funding?
Would private funding come under grants?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I guess you could say private funding. Who knows? Somebody might want to donate money to the county, and that go through the department, they'd manage it. You got a nice compliment under the chat, Jennifer.
I did, thank you, that's really nice. Okay, so we're gonna add county and private funding then, yeah? In that first section.
Yes.
Does anybody disagree with that? Okay, perfect. So I will make a note to add that. Oh, we got a chat, hold on. Sounds great, okay. Okay,
Yeah, because I just wanted to be sure. I think when Leslie Wilkins was on one of these calls about maybe 3 weeks or a month ago, the County Economic Development Strategy, CEDS, which is kind of like a white paper that every county in the United States has to put together in order to qualify for federal funding. And the one that was done in 2016, the agricultural elements in there were basically, that was fumbled by the county. Nothing ever happened, even though compost and a slaughterhouse and a couple of other things were specified as the top 5 priorities, and that went nowhere. And so 2021, that has to be rewritten and renewed in order to go forward from 2022 onward. We don't want to miss the bus again. And so we have to make it, I think, maybe explicit is too hard a word, but we really want the Department of Agriculture to have their fingers in not only the direction that goes, but also the implementation and execution of that, because I don't think the agricultural community can have another swing and a miss at both compost and slaughterhouse facilities.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, anyone else? Comments, questions, concerns?
Oh, just that I agree with what Jerry said, and I remember hearing this from Leslie Wilkins. So yeah, I think that's a really important catch. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, next was research and development. So collaborate with government agencies, research institutions, community members, ag groups, stakeholders, and experts to gain insight and develop solutions to ag-related issues and obtain feedback to ensure the department continues to meet community needs. Assist other divisions by providing new and up-to-date information that will promote sustainable growth in our agricultural sector. Collect available market and agricultural data. Create databases that will allow data to be put to use by members of the community to fill gaps in the agricultural sector. Were there any comments, concerns, or suggestions that you guys saw that would cause us to make some changes to this?
Just for clarification, when you say assist other divisions, I'm assuming those are other departments.
Yeah, so like zoning, enforcement, water, things like that.
Okay,
Do you guys want to say departments instead of divisions? Okay,
Definitely.
okay, so change divisions to departments. Okay. All right. Is there anything else on this one? Okay, move on to education, outreach, and advocacy. Improve agricultural literacy by developing programs that increase farmer, consumer, market, educator, and student awareness about agriculture, regulations, and opportunities. Provide support and coordinate with educational and research programs and teaching resources to schools. Provide educational resources and training to ensure the safety of farmers and their families. Organize cultural volunteer programs and opportunities to provide hands-on assistance to the ag sector. Work as a community liaison and advocate for farmers and the agricultural sector to address concerns and gain feedback for research and development.
Jen, they might get excited when they see that, the county. I mean, it is something really good, but I can see them like backpedaling and say, oh, we got to do all this. But a lot of this is done by other state and county agencies, mostly state education side. So it's more a matter of directing people to those things that are in place. I mean, they could do a few things. Lane would probably know, she does a lot of that to herself, the schools.
So thank you, William. What this does is this legitimizes all the stuff that we've been doing for the past 10 years and makes it easier for us to move forward. So I'm really happy to read this.
Me too.
Yeah, this was this was the second largest thing that was brought up in the comments for priorities from the community. So it scored 4th in agreement rates on the survey, but then in the comments for the name your top 3, education came up 2nd. So that's really cool.
Even when we did that big thing several years ago at the Maui Beach, at meeting education, I think was one of the top ones, 1 and 2. And that was attended by over 100 people.
Awesome. Okay, so we're good on this one. Does anybody else have any comments, suggestions, concerns that we would need to look at to rewrite this, or we're good? Next is policy and regulation assistance. So review regulations with consequences to the ag system and advocate on behalf of the community for change, incentives, or exemptions. Provide assistance to the community when needed with county, state, and federal regulations and permitting. Create a streamlined permitting process for ag and perform agricultural property inspections for all county departmental applications with knowledgeable inspectors.
Can Brendan Baltazar give the test to see if they're knowledgeable inspectors?
I'm sure he'd be happy to do that.
I want to be there.
He put him in one of his squeeze shoots.
Okay, so is there anything you guys saw that should be addressed in this, or are we okay to move on? Agency court. Oh, go ahead.
Is there a difference between knowledgeable and trained? Trained to me is just stronger than knowledgeable.
Yeah, I don't know if at the moment we have any training programs for the inspectors.
Okay.
So at the moment we would be going with knowledgeable at best, and then hopefully the department would create, you know, hopefully they understand that, you know, we're asking for knowledgeable inspectors, and maybe they create a training process for their inspectors so that they're all on the same wavelength.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay.
One of the biggest problems with the inspectors. One of the biggest problems with the inspectors that we see is that there's the rule or the law, and then they have their rule and their opinion and all of that. And that part really messes it up, because today you get one inspector, tomorrow you get another one. They come with their own opinion, and the opinion is worth nothing. Basically, it's they should follow the rule in the law. If it says you can do this, then they shouldn't be trying to, you know, counter it. But that's been everybody's pet peeve.
Yeah, I mean, making sure that we have knowledgeable inspectors was one of the top things that we heard throughout this process from, you know, different people in the field, was that it just doesn't make sense when the inspectors come out. They're all different. They all have different opinions, and they're all looking at different things. So I think this is a really important one to address.
We need uniformity is what we're all saying.
Fairness, yeah.
If it's about ag, we need it to be about ag.
That's right.
I had a B&B owner tell me that in the B&B community, they're up for renewals, and they've got inspectors coming out, and what the people that were doing everything right, made all the right reports and been in business, they aren't even looking at that stuff. They're coming in and looking for problems on the land and then finding ways to disqualify them.
Bingo.
So it's going on. It's going on right now. People are terrified.
So we need to anticipate what problems might be in the future and nip them in the bud.
Okay. Oh, before I move on, anything else on that one? We good? Okay. Agency coordination, our definition was open lines of communication to build bridges within the agricultural sector, develop shared goals and visions for the county, and develop strategic plans to achieve those goals. This can include, but it is not limited to government, private, and public agencies. This came in 8th in agreement, and it was kind of down the list on, sorry guys, down the list on the comments portion. But I think a lot of people do realize that agency coordination is a much needed thing, and that everybody's been working in silos just trying to survive for so long that there needs to be some kind of overarching, you know, coordination and direction efforts so that everybody kind of knows what everybody's doing and who to help and who to connect people with and things like that. Were there any comments, suggestions, or concerns that you guys read in the community feedback that would make us want to change this or alter it or anything like that?
For this one, I don't know how this fits in, but I had thought that that the new department would be reaching out to the other departments and finding out what their interface has been with agriculture, and maybe find out where they need support and where they've, well, just if there's where they interface, what they've done, and how they need support. I think that's, as a new department, that would be something that we should advocate for right from the beginning. And then that we can reach back out to the departments to let them know that their concerns can be handled now that they're known.
Yeah, I think when we were originally discussing that, that was what we wanted. I think that we put in the last line, this can include, but is not limited to government, private, and public agencies, because we thought that there was too many to list if we started getting really specific. So we just put government to kind of cover that whole portion of different departments and at the state, federal, and county level. Do we want to be more specific, or are we okay with that?
I think it'll just be a one-time survey. It doesn't need to be in this.
Okay.
I'll remember it.
Okay. Anybody else on this one? Okay. So the next one is workforce development. And we said increase agricultural related industries, occupational skills training, educational opportunities, and the number of agricultural workers in Maui County. Support agricultural related businesses to allow the increase of opportunity for ag-related jobs that compensate workers with livable wages and develop pathways to affordable workforce housing. Is there anything in the comments, questions, or suggestions or feedback from the community that would make us rethink this section? Want to move to the next one?
Real quick, I just have a
Okay.
question about that
Yep.
one. I mean, I love the whole concept. I guess I'm just curious what support would mean. Like, would that be related to grants in terms of supporting businesses to pay their workers more, or?
Yeah, I think that there's a plethora of things that can be done to support ag-related businesses and increase the number of agricultural workers. So that's, incentivizing, ag-related businesses and jobs and research and development to grow those areas. Funding, it can also be, increased educational opportunities, looking at our college to develop those workers so that we can, grow those areas for workforce development. And then even, possibly looking at ways to make it more plausible to pay like livable wages in the ag industry.
Okay.
Anybody else have
And some of this kind of interweaves with some of the other top questions, topics, whatever.
Mhm.
So it kind of has to work together with the grant part we talked about and the education part.
Yeah, absolutely. And then
But it's
workforce
good to have it.
development. Go ahead, William. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was done.
Oh, okay. And then workforce development came in as the 5th highest agreement rate on the survey, but came in more towards the bottom on the comments portion. Okay, so invasive species, threats, and pests. Collaborate with federal and state agencies to develop additional time-sensitive protocols like pre and post inspections to prevent the introduction of invasive species and additional inspection for invasive species at retail locations, airports, and harbors. Provide education to the ag sector about agricultural threats such as climate change, pests, and ways to prevent unnecessary imports that may introduce invasives. Provide feedback to develop policy and legislation to prevent the introduction of invasive species, combat agricultural threats. Oh, and manage. Did I get cut off? Oh, I think it was manage pests. Okay, so I have to add pests. Does anybody have questions, concerns, comments on this one?
Didn't we mention rapid response too, or that might be in another section? I don't know.
Rapid response to.
Once it gets here, it's like this. We sit on our hands till it explodes, and we got so much of it.
Oh, I think it was the develop additional time-sensitive protocols. Was that what you were talking? Yeah. Because there was the making sure that we respond in time, and then there was also making sure that whatever was implemented wouldn't prevent agricultural products or delay shipping efforts too much to where it wasn't feasible to ship out. I know Nate brought that up. So I think there was 2 time-sensitive issues, so we just put additional time-sensitive protocols.
I think the bottleneck is they don't have, so to speak, the fire department. You know what I mean? The response department to like get on it. I mean, I don't know how you solve that problem. You're not gonna have people sitting around and waiting for pests to come and then attack it, but some little volunteer army or something.
Yeah, I think collaborating with MISC is, definitely feasible. And then once there's, additional protocols put in place to manage it coming in, that's going to help tremendously with, kind of just like MISC having to put out fires, and they can focus on when something comes. Whereas like right now we have the inspections leaving, but not coming in, and we've got retail shops selling invasives and things that could be easily avoided. So those things are just making their job harder. So hopefully if we have these additional inspections and protocols as things come in, rather than, after they're already here, it's going to help organizations like MISC and, our farmers and ag community and forestry and all that to combat it, what does come in or what's already here.
And actually MISC, they have the ability to respond and react. They're trained for all of that. They don't always have the resource specific for something added. So I don't know, whoever manages this part or whatever, kind of got to get on kitty together at least. So MISC can probably be the one to run with it, but they can maybe hire more temps right away kind of thing, and and have funds for whatever materials they need. But,
Mhm.
you know, at least have that like an emergency fund or whatever that can be easily turned over without a lot of red tape. Sounds easy, but it's not.
Jennifer, I like the way this is written. But if I take it into a scenario of what we've experienced, I think we've continually experienced things coming in from Big Island and getting sold at nurseries. And it's, is that nothing? Can we do anything about it? Well, we haven't been able to, and MIST hasn't. But I could see if this is written into the department's original intent of what it's supposed to do, then it could form an ordinance at the county level that says if we get invasive species in from a nursery or from wherever we get it, that maybe they get one warning. And then after that second time, they can't send stuff here for a year. I mean, that's the way I see this, the power in what is written here being used. I don't think we can forecast for that, but we're certainly going to have to do things like that to stop the invasives from coming in without the proper preparation and care by those shipping things to us. They need to have some consequences if they're not paying attention.
Yeah,
So
and I think collaborating with state and federal agencies is going to be the first step to try and find some middle ground of how we can protect our own county from invasive threats, pest threats and species, with not, with their collaboration and, blessing, because, they still need to do their job and that's, their kuleana, but finding ways to do maybe shared funding to create more positions or things like that so that we could have these additional inspections and protocols and helping them and supporting them, because, the Department of Ag is really kind of maxed at what they're able to do. So, having the department to be able to work with them to find ways to, increase inspections and efforts to keep invasive species out is going to probably the first step. And then hopefully, yes, we can move forward in that direction more to even, make it more barriers to prevent invasive species from getting in.
Maybe what you need to do is to put another word after protocols. So you're developing additional time-sensitive protocols and penalties.
Yes. I like
I
that.
want stronger language in here.
I like
It's a
that.
huge problem. Yeah. Dr. Pang has commented on it and how many of these invasive species get by and other kinds of entry-level pests.
Okay, so do we want to try to put in stronger language here?
I'm just going to jump in real quick. I'm sorry, guys. These are all good comments. I think the way you wrote this, Jennifer, is really well written, because essentially what the county would do is collaborate and support the current regulation that's out there. There's so much regulation that exists at a state level. And so if you're trying to increase penalties that the responsibility really falls to the state, it might not pass at the end of the day. It's going to be a tough sell. That's all I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of regulation that's in place at the state and federal level. So if you're looking to establish more penalty and whatnot, it's going to be challenged as a statewide issue as opposed to just being county specific.
So Lane, with the current penalties that there are for bringing in invasive species or things like that, are we just not seeing the enforcement of that at the state and federal levels?
No, the problem is the enforcement. The state people aren't necessarily here, nor are the federal people necessarily here at the airports. So that's an example of the issue for me. I mean, however we deal with it, it's obviously not working right now. So whatever we need to do to change it.
So I know, as far as I know, the county doesn't have the ability to like fine invasive species as they're coming in from the ports, harbors, and things, because that is state. However, if, because there's already fines and things, maybe with the increased collaboration and possibly some shared, job positions to support, additional inspections, those fines could be enforced upon. So it's just looking at this to see if we want to actually change the language from what the community already approved, or if we want to keep it the same and make note of it for, the collaboration process with the state and federal agencies, that we want to see the enforcement of those fines if invasive species are brought in.
Well, we have to attack the supervision. Attack, maybe it's too strong a word, but we don't have enough supervisors right now. A lot of the stuff is coming in because it's not being checked, because we don't have enough money to pay for the people to check it. So I don't know, how do you deal with that? And maybe we're not going to deal with that tonight, but it's just raising a flag.
I think the department will be dealing with it. That's what we need. That's another reason we need the department. And putting penalties in there doesn't spell anything out. It just lets them know that there can be some consequences. I'm not sure how we meld those with what the concerns were brought up, but I'm sure we can do that. I'd add penalties.
Jennifer?
The county just gotta kind of follow through with the stuff, As Ernie Reason should say, bird dog it.
Jennifer, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I'm talking to you from Pearl Harbor, and I love what Mr. Greenleaf and Ms. Huff has said. I don't know if you still work for Ulupono, Mr. Munekata, but I remember over 20 years ago, as a young man, I used to hear concerns by people that I grew up with. They were my heroes. So like Lloyd Loop, Uncle Art Madaris, Uncle Bob Hobdy, Uncle Don Reeser. And way back then, we knew that the federal government and the state failed not only to fund, but to properly interdict invasive species, as well as illegal substances, okay? That people get paid to preclude from coming to the island of Maui. The reason why Hui Alanui Mokena and their pals fought against the extension of the runway was for that very reason you mentioned, Micah. You open the floodgates, you cannot stop the feds from doing whatever they want to Maui. This is all documented. So I love your passion and your care, Ms. Huff, Mr. Greenleaf. The United States military cannot even control what happens to their properties here at Pearl Harbor and Hickam. That's why we were worried about Maui, because the cane fields are much closer to the runway than out here. These are all documented. So I love hearing the 11 of you, pro and or con, caring about Maui, because it's not just one size fits all. And you gotta be selfish, Micah, for Maui. I don't care about the rest of the state, because if they don't care, that's their problem. This is Maui, what we want. Let us get what we want. And we have the advocacy, our champions, our apologists, our legislators to make it happen, because Maui deserves it. Jennifer, we need to be the standard, okay? Separate ourselves from the chaff, like my dad likes to say, separate the caca from the chocolates, okay? We on Maui are the chocolates, okay? And there is nobody holding anybody accountable. But that's what I do for the US Navy. And that's why I care. That's why I'm monitoring, I'm listening today, Jennifer. You know, we're all in. We're all in. You guys are farmers. I'm a farmer. And I care. I really, really do care. But 30 years ago, we intervened, and they call us stupid, crazy. You cannot even control Kahului Airport, Micah, right now, the way it's going. The mayor is clueless.
Yeah.
He has his pants down, and I told him so, but he don't care. So I'm letting you guys know that we know, and you guys care. So we're all in. You tell Mr. Senesi, I joined because he's family to me, okay? And you know who I learned from? He's not from the Hawaiians. He's from the non-Hawaiians I will learn from. That's how I will learn. So I'm sorry for sounding a little loud, but you know, this COVID thing will expose everybody's weakness, everybody's weakness. And many people failed us, Jennifer. They failed us, and they get paid to do this, by the way. Trust me, they get paid. So that's okay. We will find out who are the scrubs, who are not doing their job. And like you said, Miss Huff, yes, supervision. Everybody has a boss. Everybody has a boss. And in the business I do of compliance, of quality assurance for the US Navy, we hold them accountable. And we don't just horizontally, we fire them, we get rid of them because there's too much at stake. Okay, Maui, you, we, I come from Maui. I born Pauwela, Haiku. I am born over there. I love that place. So thank you, Jennifer. Forgive me for speaking too much. I love the way it's written because many people have worked very hard, you know, and so I care. And enough said. Love you folks. Aloha, Mr. Jacinto.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, one of the things that I learned from working at the county was that there are a lot of people that really do want to make change, but it's not, when you work in government, making changes is not an easy thing because it is, you know, a situation where if you rock the boat too much, you know, your livelihood is at stake. So I think having the department work with federal and state agencies to find out ways to really support the things that we want to see happen as far as invasive threats and you know, species threats and pests is a way to kind of build that bridge. Because a lot of this has just been broken down. And, you know, I'm sure the Department of Ag feels like they're doing their best with the resources that they have, which is not much. And that they, you know, what can they really do? You know, so once you're in that position where you're underfunded and overworked and not able to do things, you tend to shut down. So I'm hoping that this can be a way to build those bridges back up and build that collaboration back up and provide the support needed to kind of address these things, because it is very, very important. And I hope that Maui County can lead the way. I think that we're setting the tone for this department, that it will lead the way and show people that there's another way for departments to, you know, coordinate and facilitate and advocate for, you know, their communities and agricultural sectors in a different manner than what's been done before.
And Jennifer, there are people that go into the government, well, it's county, state, federal. Yeah, they get their job, they worry about their pension, retirement, understandable. But just know that there are champions out there, and the word is called ghosting, okay? Ghosting, yeah? So that those guys don't need to worry about their job. They hire outside people to be the troublemakers, whatever you want to call it, right? That holds people accountable. It's done all the time. My whole comment today was to those people that are in government, that are doing well. I do not want to be demoralizing, discouraging. I want to be inspiring, uplifting, and that's my whole purpose. I may not sound that way, but that is because there are good people and we need to protect them. That's what I do, me and my family, we protect them. And we hold the scrubs accountable, right? Like Ms. Hoff said, everybody has a supervisor. So the reason why they're scrubs is their supervisor is not doing the job, really, you know? So thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, so with this, do we want to add penalties in? Or do we want to keep it the same as right now and just say collaborate to develop additional protocols and develop policy and legislation to prevent invasive species, combat agricultural threats, and manage pests?
I vote for penalty.
I faintly heard somebody but didn't hear. Okay, if you want to add in penalties, please give a thumbs up on your screen. That one. Hold on, I gotta go through the screens. If your camera's off, I obviously can't see you. Oh, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I have 4 for add-in penalties. How many do we have on tonight? Out of 12, so it's not enough to add it in. Sorry, we have a chat. 5. Okay, so we still have under half. So we're not going to add it in, but it's something that we can, you know, put forward to council members when we say collaborate, that we want them to really focus on enforcing the penalties that already exist and possibly developing more in the future. Does that sound okay to everyone? Okay. Okay. And then, oh, sorry, was there anything else on that before we move on? Okay. The next one is resource regeneration and protection. Oh, sorry. Okay, work with county, state, and federal agencies and community organizations to provide insight and feedback on projects that might affect the agricultural sector and implement programs that ensure sustainable utilization and/or regeneration of major natural resources such as land, soil, water, air, minerals, forest, fisheries, and wild flora and fauna, so that our agricultural system will continue to have the resources it needs to thrive. So this one came in right after workforce development, so number 6 on the agreement rates. And this was actually 3rd in the community comments, as far as people, you know, pointing to it as being a priority. So was there anything in this area that, in this definition, that we wanted to change based on the feedback, comments, suggestions from the community? Okay, we good on that one? Anyone? Last call? Okay. Next is contracts and procurement. This one was pretty cut and dry. Assistance to promote local food production and import substitution with a focus first on local food security. This was the 3rd from last in the agreement rates. However, most of the responses that weren't yes are just unsure. So I think that, you know, this is mainly a topic that you're really getting into once you get into the exports, or you're leasing land, or you're dealing with like shipping and things like that. So it may just be that a lot of the people that took the survey and answered this question were just really unsure. They haven't experienced this part of the agricultural sector, but we still did get a response rate of, let's see, 85 or 78.5% in agreement, with 16.1% being unsure. So is there anything in, oh, let me get back to that screen. Anything in this section that we want to change, add, or redefine based on the community feedback? Okay, I'm going to take that as nope and move on to the next. Transportation. Okay, Collaborate with the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission, provide advocacy and education and resources to minimize cost and other barriers for transportation, crops lost or livestock lost in transportation, promote access to the ag community to federal programs that reduce the cost of transportation, and coordinate transportation sharing to support the distribution of local products. This came in second to last on the agreement results. And it had a response rate of 75.2% in agreement, with 14.9% being unsure and so less than 10% saying no. Was there any comments, suggestions, or concerns that would make us want to rewrite this, or are we okay with it as is? Okay. Taking that as an agreement. And the last one is agricultural theft, vandalism, and liability. So develop programs to educate and address liability issues and work with the Maui Police Department, county, and state to address the losses from agricultural theft and vandalism. This came in last on the agreement rates, but it still had a 70.2% agreement rate with a 17.1% unsure rate and a 12.7% no rate. So even this being the very last, as far as percentages of agreement rate, that is really still a pretty high percentage rate of agreement. So is there anything in that definition that you guys saw that you would want to change, add, or modify as far as language goes?
Jen, I have a comment. Develop programs to educate. Somewhere in there, we have laws that are set up, and I don't know, I mean, this is a group discussion. If that should be somehow mentioned here somewhere, or it doesn't matter.
I think, you know, there are a lot of laws about theft and vandalism. I think it's just working with to educate the Maui Police Department that just because it's not a retail shop doesn't mean that that theft and vandalism isn't a local business that's being affected by it. So I think it's just education, because, you know, when you see someone that's had a mango tree stripped, you know, as a cop, you're like, okay, well, they took some mangoes. That's super unfortunate. But what they may not realize, but that might be over $1,000 or, you know, even $5,000 worth of produce that your business has now lost because that tree has been stripped. So I don't think that there necessarily needs to be any new laws. I think it's more of education and making the police department understand that when there are reports of these things, they need to be taken seriously. Because it's a legitimate business. And just like if somebody came in and stole $5,000 worth of merchandise from a retail location, that they would need to take that serious, they also need to show that same respect for farms.
Yeah, not a little bit of the differences. Sometimes, you know, they plan like on robbery or whatever, and they hit big. In ag, it's usually they're not going to hit too big, but they're going to hit constantly till the trees, you know, and lychee is one of them. I mean, I've seen in haiku, you know, truck going down the road with the branch cut off, and they're dragging them down to the house to strip it. You know, it's like, good grief, this is ridiculous.
And that, you know, that's an educational program that could be developed, or, you know, within the department. I know, you know, hat off with CGC, we don't really accept produce to be sold through our organization, because, you know, that's one thing people can, you know, either have us harvest and donate or harvest and sell. But if people are just bringing us produce to have us sell it, we won't do it, because we cannot guarantee that it came from their farm. So that is to deter them from going and stealing or stripping somebody else's trees to then bring it to us to sell. So that might be something that we could work with local markets to educate them that this is an actual issue people do and go steal from trees or steal ag products and then try to sell them, and why they shouldn't buy from people like that unless they're actually associated with a plot of land or a business that it can be traced back to. But what do you guys think? Do you think we need to put in additional laws, or do you think it's an education issue?
Like you said, the laws are in place, so it's more of an educational thing. Work with the police department about it, the severity.
I would only add, just because this is based on some of the what others have done around ag theft, and it's working with the prosecuting attorney's office. It's following through on reports and actually prosecuting some of these people that are taking advantage of ag operations. It's very key and important because a lot of ag operations statewide might put in their report to the police, and at the end of the day, it sort of gets buried in the mess of other issues. So ag issues and ag theft and vandalism tends to get deprioritized. So it's really trying to find a prioritization for the police department and the prosecuting side to make sure that these things actually follow through. I know that there's quite a few farmers across the state that are just tired of doing the report work and then nothing follows through. So it's really seeing it through, enforcement, seeing it through all the way.
That makes a lot of sense. We did put the county, but we specify the police department. So I think it's reasonable to specify the prosecuting attorney's office as well. What do you guys think?
Yes.
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 Good one, Micah.
Okay, that was a great discussion. Okay, is there anything else for this subject? Okay, I believe that is the last one as far as this section is. Then we go on to like the resource database of people and what they, their demographics were and things. So the next step in this process would be, I'm going to pull up the response rate to these. Can everybody see the response rates? Okay. So I honestly thought we would have to make a couple goes at the survey and the language to get response rates this high. So I'm really, really surprised that our response rates are this high with over, 320 responses throughout the community. So it's up to the group whether we feel that these response rates are high enough to move forward with these areas of need and start drafting legislation to include these as areas of need, or if we want to go back and get higher response rates, or if we have a cutoff point. I think the lowest is 70.2%. So it's just getting the group's feedback on that.
I would say we should go with what we have. I can't see it getting much better.
Lauren also said these are all statistically significant. I think we have it. So does anybody have any concerns about moving forward with these, with the agreement rates that we got?
I agree. I think we should move forward, but I think it would be prudent to possibly email everybody because there's not too many people on the call this evening. So maybe just send out an email getting the confirmation to see if there's any dissent in the group.
Okay. I can put that out. So I'll take it as a vote for a vote tonight, just so that we'll have that to present in the email. The group that was on the call either agreed or didn't agree to move forward, and then I can send out these response rates too. Because if we decide to move forward, then that gives us the next thing to work on behind the scenes, which is drafting the legislation to put all of this into a draft. And then we are still waiting on the second survey results, which we're going to give a month for. So I just put that out via social media today. So I changed the date to today. And once we get that back, if we get the same kind of agreement responses with that, that's the second part of the legislation. So with these two surveys, we'd be able to get through the legislation portion and then be able to move on to the strategic planning portion, which is incredible. And that's like, I think it's, you know, you guys should all give yourselves a huge pat on the back for coming up with these definitions and working this language, because to get this high of agreement rates is really, really incredible. So you guys did a great job of listening to the community and hearing the needs and bringing that information back. Really, it's like, when I was seeing 90%, I'm like, whoa, like I never really imagined that we would get that high of response rates. So good job. Okay, so I will take a vote. Is there anybody that doesn't agree that these response rates are high enough to push forward? Okay, everybody that agrees these response rates are high enough to push forward, please vote yes. Okay, so I'm trying to get to the next screen. Looks like that's unanimous. Did I miss anybody with a no? Chat. Okay. All right. That's awesome. Yay! Love you guys. So cool. Okay. So as we look at, what time are we at? 6:13. So the next thing that we're going to look at is looking at actual programs, projects, or areas of focus that would be the most impactful to focus on in the first 5 years and kind of prioritizing that. So I'm actually, how many people do we have? Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing real quick so I can see all these. I'm going to split us into 2 separate groups, and then we can kind of, that way it'll allow for a little bit more discussion. I'm going to give us, I'd say 20 minutes to come up with the top 10 things that we could see actually making the hugest impact in the agricultural sector based on these survey results. And then we'll come back as a group, we'll match those up, and we'll start the prioritization process to see what is actually going to be the most impactful for the department to move forward with. Okay.
Before you split us up, can you kind of go over it a little bit?
Yeah. So, you know, our top, let's see, I would say the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The top 10 in the community comments that kind of matched up with the survey results were infrastructure. So supporting small farmers with affordable land, housing, making it financial feasible, and, you know, access to water. Commercial kitchens and co-ops were kind of what the feedback from the community as prioritizations were under infrastructure. The next largest feedback was for education, outreach, and advocacy. And then after that came resource regeneration and, you know, food security. Markets and distribution and funding kind of tied. And then water was the next biggest issue, with, you know, looking at diversion and prioritization, allocation, and things like that. Invasive species was the next one after that. And then research development and workforce development were like kind of the last 2 biggest points that kept being made in the community feedback areas of need, our top 3 priorities. So, you know, keeping those things in mind and the response rates in mind, what would your groups come up with as the top 10 either programs to implement or capital improvement projects to go after for the department? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but without seeing it, it's a little bit hard.
Okay. Do you want me to, do you guys have the link to the response rates? Okay, I can add in, let me go back, sorry.
And
Your
Annette
recommendation, we're just counting on you.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to this and I'm gonna add in these
There you
real
go.
quick. And I'll put this link so that you guys have it. Okay, so the response rates are the ones with the percentage, and these were kind of like I went through and tallied the response rates for the written responses to the question for the top 3 priorities. And then Lauren, thank you so much. Just put the link to the Google Doc of what you're seeing right now in the chat. So you guys can pull that up, and I will split you guys into 2 groups, and I can bounce back and forth between the 2 if you guys have questions. And so we'll just come up with the top 10 programs, initiatives, or capital improvement projects. So capital improvement projects are actual projects that we would want to fund. So that would be like, if we're doing like processing and distribution facilities, or developing commercial kitchens, or developing a compost program, those are capital improvement projects that are going to be like an actual project with tangible results that we would want to fund. Does that make sense? And programs and initiatives would be more like legislative or policy, and programs would be more like educational outreach or studies too. Okay.
I'm thinking ordinances should be a priority.
Ordinances? Oh, like legislative ordinances?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
I think the link I put in there, Jennifer, is not the one that you have on the screen though.
Okay, I'm going to put the link in that. Copy link. I'm gonna go to chat. Sorry, I talked to myself. There you go. Okay, there we go. That one should be it. Okay. So everyone should have that link, and I'm going to break us into 2 groups, and we'll have 20 minutes. So it's 6:40. Okay. And then we'll come back together. Okay. Okay, you should have received an invite. Lauren, were you able to join? Lauren? Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Oh,
I just heard a deer barking.
Two top priorities would be water infrastructure, capital improvement, and invasive species. That's just my 2 cents.
Say it again, Bill. Your speaker's kind of low.
Okay, my 2 capital improvement funding concerns are in water and invasive species.
I agree.
And
Can you
they-
expand on water?
Excuse me?
Would you expand on water, like what project you would like to see implemented?
More like, well, it's gonna be on 2-hour discussion, but the water availability is kind of critical, and we had some discussions on it, and when we were developing all this stuff, and I was happy that Skippy Howe was in our group and Bobby Pahia, and it's trying to balance it, the natural flow with ag needs, and then the needs of the county with buildings and those kind of stuff. Because if you look back, from what I remember, ag kind of developed the water.
Okay, hi, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm just checking in. Just seeing how you guys
Oh,
doing.
okay.
4, 5.
So if I understand it, you've given us a bunch of different headings, infrastructure, education, et cetera. And we're supposed to discuss what we think are the top 10 hits that we would like to see under those headings in sort of the first 5 years that the Department of Agriculture is up and running. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, what you would like to see based on the representation you guys are doing for your sectors and from the community feedback. So we should be looking in, taking all of that into consideration, not just what we personally would want, but on behalf of the community, what we think would be the most impactful.
So we should be kind of mining all the comments that came through on the link that Lauren sent, right?
The link that Lauren sent was the responses from the surveys, yes. So those were the survey responses that we were asking you guys to go over these last 2 weeks and kind of pull notes from. So yes, pulling things from that, our discussions, your own personal experiences through your education and jobs and stuff representing the ag sector to kind of find the most impactful things that would make the biggest differences to go after right away.
Okay, so if I go to this Google Doc that you it said that's the one that's got the topics, or is the one from Lauren the one that has all the feedback that we're supposed to be working on?
The one that Lauren sent is the survey with all the feedback. So that will have the individual comments and suggestions from the groups. I kind of went through the question of the top priorities, and that's what's in column E on the link that I sent along with the response rates.
Oh, okay, all right. So like number 1 from what you've called out is infrastructure.
Yeah, so topics relating to infrastructure and supporting, like access to land, water, affordability, feasibility for farmers and things, co-ops, processing, distribution facilities was the number 1 comment from all of the feedback for the top 3 priorities from the community.
Okay, so no one in the community actually said anything about compost and reservoirs.
Actually, that water was down below markets and distribution. It was brought up a lot. And then a lot of the composting and soil things were brought up under resource regeneration and protection.
Oh, okay.
I tried to keep them broad because the way people worded things was very different. So trying to find those broad topics so that we could just see how they matched up with the percentage rates of what the response rates were, if that makes sense. Because I know that you guys were all going through those comments individually.
Okay, so I'm just a little confused. You provided the headings in your link and Lauren provided all the comments from the community. So we're supposed to parse some of the comments from the community and distill that.
Yes.
Okay.
Farmer Jerry,
Yes.
let me follow your lead. In 1978, I had the honor of meeting a Haole guy called Vincent Mina. And he came to Kaho'olawe Island with my dad. And ever since that day, I have been a major compost champion. My dad, my grandma, and I. I love what you said about county composting. So I think we can put that under a heading, resource regeneration, protection. You know, I like what you said. My dream was to always have, not just for the kids in school, you know how the teachers teach the kids, I want you to make a compost pile. I want you to see, what's that word? What's that thing that comes out of the worms?
Oh, the worm poop.
No, casting.
Casting.
Do you know who was the biggest casting people on Maui? Take a wild guess, Ms. Huff.
The biggest casting people on Maui.
Probably Vincent.
No, it was my dad. Right up in Haiku, Pauela, right above the lighthouse. Okay? Yes. My dream, Jennifer, is we bring these millions of worms legally now, legally, because it's illegal to post them in the US Post Office. I know, trust me, I know. Because that's what is the foundation of the forest. Anyway, I love that, Farmer Jerry. Number 2, reservoirs. The only people who care about reservoirs are farmers and people that have cattle. It shows many of these years, you know, Jennifer, I was there for the blessing of Kahapau Reservoir, Piholo Reservoir, I can name them all. We don't have that kind of visionary people in our county anymore. I agree with you, Farmer Jerry. Sorry, I'm calling you Farmer Jerry.
That's
but
cool.
I totally agree with you. If I put any 2 bullets on my wall for today, it's exactly what you said. And I will second your motion. Okay, thank you.
Right on. Yeah, so Jennifer, I mean, I guess the reservoirs go underneath water.
Yeah, so reservoirs would be storage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just on that note, when I lived in Costa Rica, it was pretty normal for people to get water delivered through water tankers to their water catchments. So farmers or people in rural areas that were doing farming or just households. And I know a lot of the time here, the county will, you know, flush the lines and all of that water will just go out into the street. That is something that we could be utilizing in water tankers and then taking that out to catchments or storage areas to actually be utilized. So there are different ways to utilize water storage. And I think water storage is a very, very important thing. But I want this to be you guys's, so I'm not going to say much more.
Well, that's fine. You prompt all sorts of stuff. See, one of the things you prompted is I had a meeting with a different Lauren last week, and it was with the Maui Nui, and I forget the rest of the name of it. It was something.
Maui Nui Food Alliance.
Yeah. So that was it. So I had a meeting with them, and Bob and Kelly King were on there. And one of the things that Bob talked about, he goes, how come I have to pay 85 cents per 1,000 gallons of water and Bobby Pahia next door only pays 50 cents? And I was like, I want some of your action because I'm paying $1.10 plus, because I actually live on the property here, we have to pay the first 2 tiers at residential rates before we can get into ag rates.
Wow.
So that increases our water bill when it doesn't rain. It increases it substantially. And it should be that if you're a bona fide farmer, commercial farmer, that your water rate should be agricultural from the beginning to the end. You shouldn't have to go through this whole component of residential rates that just has a negative effect on the bottom line. And if you look at any of the farmers that live on Na'alai Road, we're not watering our lawns, we're watering our crops and our cattle. And you find people that are on ag lots here that are supposedly farming, and they're watering their lawns as much or more than they're watering their crops. So that might be something that the Department of Ag can work with the water department to come up with something that's treats the bona fide farmers and ranchers a little more fairly in terms of what we have to pay for water.
Absolutely. And prioritization, you know, and pricing are a really big thing. In my personal opinion, I'll just say this. I think that a really in-depth study needs to be done about prioritization, the distribution channels and storage, so that we can actually really look at our current water system and how it's funneled with the diversions of EMI and the control, and finding a way that the community backs and the ag sector backs to really reevaluate our water systems. Because I don't think anybody's happy with it.
And you know, Kenneth has always pointed out in the past that the Kahakapau Reservoir that Manuel talked about, that was actually funded federally explicitly to support agriculture upcountry. And now as agriculture has waned in a percentage of water use, a lot of that water is used for residential. And that's not really what it was designed for.
I'm going to switch back to the other group and check on them, but you guys are doing great, and I'll pop back
Okay,
in.
well, we'll try to survive without you.
We just need to we already had invasives,
Yeah.
but I think in this one, infrastructure, everything I've heard, and I've heard all these conversations multiple times, we are coming up short in every single aspect.
Yeah.
So we definitely need to consider a slaughterhouse. We should do something about animal processing, and if that would be part of the infrastructure that we need. And it might be for chickens, it might be for pigs, it might be for cattle. And Decoit is amazing and wonderful for what they do, but William knows, and he's told me that they get maxed out pretty quick. And when we're talking about 50 or more thousand animals that are breeding, that means that 300 or 400 at a crack or 3,000 or 4,000 at a crack is not enough. So I think we just ought to put down that the department has to look at infrastructure being a slaughterhouse, and we need it all over Maui.
In a composting element, because all of the waste is, you know, they spend $4,000+ a month throwing it away in a dumpster. You know,
Perfect. That goes right to the infrastructure.
And yeah, so you know that could pay some of their bills another way and utilizing in composting. And we've gone through this forever and ever. And you know, our roadblock is the Department of Health and whatnot. But I think I would agree with you guys, and I would kind of add that, you know, like infrastructure, the whole component from in to the out, all the way to the poop chute.
In to out, yeah. Another quotable remark.
Jennifer, we didn't get too far, but we had
Okay.
good conversation.
Do you guys want me to give you another 20 minutes?
No, I think
You have
I
4
think
minutes
our group-
left. Oh,
our
you're
group
good?
is small enough, the whole group, where I think we can orderly discuss this thing with kind of your guidance.
Okay. So you're good to go back to the larger group in 4 minutes, or do we want to give it? Okay, I'm gonna go check back in with the other group then.
Sure. So I'm gonna share something really quick that Lauren had identified that.
Action and the reservoirs would end up in water.
Storage.
Would we put commercial kitchens in as the as one of the top things? What do people think about that?
Yes, definitely. And slaughterhouses.
Yeah, I think the slaughterhouse is one of those things that's got to be in the first 5 years, because
Oh,
Decoit is,
absolutely.
yeah, Decoit is well, I don't know how they're doing. I mean, we've taken animals to them and they're still open, but apparently Nakasone is not going to be staying open much longer, and he's the one and only pig guy.
That's what
So
I
the
heard.
the entire ranching population will be hamstrung without both those facilities.
Right.
So we have about 2 minutes left. You guys, do you want some extra time? The other group is saying that they're okay to go back at 6:40.
Yeah. Well, we're only on the first one.
Well, but we have a few things that'll keep people pretty busy for a while.
Okay. Do you guys want to do 10 more minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So on the composting, Jerry, I see composting.
So for infrastructure, that's you, not me. So for infrastructure, what you're saying is that we would write this into the department's things that they could create, but this would be more like a intellectual property infrastructure, how they interfaced with the schools, military, and anything that could be institutional purchasing, hospital, whatever. We could make, that would be a legislative action.
Yes.
Ordinance.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be infrastructure, though. It'd be intellectual infrastructure.
Yeah,
We should
absolutely.
address that, right? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. I could see that right away.
I think if the prices are compatible, they're pretty receptive, but you know, as long as you all good with food safety and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
A good portion of that all depends on the data collection and data awareness. So I think we need to emphasize that the department needs to start collecting data as soon as possible and keep it season over season. It's going to be critical to know where the food is, who's got it, and who wants it.
So just real quick, the other group wants 10 more minutes. So that will give you guys some time to catch up too, if that's okay.
Okay. What else you wanted us to kind of do? Maybe you can hang out.
I think we need to go off of infrastructure now and look at one of the other categories. So like in terms of some of the top 10: infrastructure, education, outreach, and advocacy, research, food security, and distribution. I think we initially had brought up water as one of the top things. Invasive species, obviously, we know is a huge issue.
I think the research is the third one. That's going to be critical as an infrastructure to the infrastructure.
And as part of that research is actually having funding allocated for departments to do research.
Well, to set up programs and to work with researchers, universities and other folks, CTAR and things like that. So yes, but again, a lot is dependent upon having some data-based decision-making that's really going to be critical.
You guys
So if
don't
you look
mind. I chime in. I think that research and development is probably one of the largest things that really should be addressed that's really not in the forefront of people's minds. But everything that we're doing is research and development. Everything that we're going to hand over to the department as far as this information, these surveys and feedback is all going to take research and development to, move on. So in my personal opinion, it's a really large priority that needs to be addressed, because if you don't have anybody doing research and development within a department, you're not going to get very progressive solutions to these issues.
Yes.
Would you all be interested in having community assessments added to the list of priorities under research and development? Similar to what we're conducting here?
Always.
Did we want to look at incentives or subsidies for farmers? Potentially as a topic or anything in that realm?
I think if subsidies.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think if subsidies are available, we should have ways to apply for them. I don't know if Maui County is going to supply subsidies, but we certainly there's certainly a lot of money available to grow and not grow certain things. But we need access into where those grants are and where available money is. So I think the department should really help out in facilitating getting a pipeline of money in here.
Yeah,
Well said. The mayor's office apparently doesn't know where money is, and unfortunately, and then then you dig around and there's money in some other department or whatever. And what Gary's saying, I think is really important. These guys gotta seek out, the money's there. So access, someone with knowledge to access.
Facilitate and just help navigate it to get here. Be an advocate for Hawaii and Maui to get the money in here.
yeah, and also like I always envisioned when for this department that it would just be like the hub of where you'd find, like you could almost have like a whole page website of like, here's the updated monthly list of everything that you could apply for as a small farm on Maui. We kind of get that through the Farm Service Agency right now, but a lot of people don't know like where to be looking. So I think having it be really streamlined and making that super clear is so important, because most farmers don't have the bandwidth to look for all of that information and like scour the internet in 10 different places.
I'd advocate even further setting it up so that farmers can hui together and apply and work together, because again, a single farmer with 5 acres just doesn't have the bandwidth nor the leverage to get that money. But the whole county of Maui could put something together that we start working together. We've got to jumpstart and kickstart this thing, and I think we can't just do it as all individual farmers.
I agree. Blanket grants are a really amazing way to make huge changes. So you can do a blanket grant for 15 to 20 farms for the needs that they have to make a large impact and write for millions of dollars. And so that could be managed by the department rather than individual farms, but the individual farms would benefit for it.
That would be incredible because honestly, like, yeah, just as an example, like we don't have the, like, we'll apply to grants where we don't have to like actually write a grant. You know what I mean? But it's like, I don't have time to do that.
Yeah. Blanket grants are amazing if we can get the department to do that. And I think it's completely feasible.
And you shouldn't. I mean, another thing I think we need to do is sort of, and this is a little off topic, sort of need to divide and conquer. People who are good at writing grants should be writing grants, and people who are good at farming should be farming. And just don't, the two don't mix. Yeah, and yes, right. But you know, we got to find a way that works. And we got to help ourselves. So there may be some pro bono work to get the kick started. But there's got to be ways that we can get past those barriers to entry.
So we actually have a grant writer that's put in to help before the department's even established. That was already allocated in this year's budget.
Yep.
And grant writers are put into the charter as being positions that need to be within the department. So it's completely feasible.
And there's other resources like MEDB and MEO who are willing to help out moving those things forward.
That's amazing. This is such great news.
Yeah, that would be pretty, like we just did a needs assessment and with our homestead community here, and that was one of the biggest things that came up was technical assistance. They just want to farm. Everybody wants to farm, but the idea of like writing a grant, applying for this, all of this stuff that all of the paperwork and all of the, you know, the bureaucracy behind it is really limiting for a lot of our farmers here. And so if there was, if the department had an ability to provide some of that assistance for our farmers, it would be amazing. It'd be spot on.
So, you know, that involves some research as to where those are and, you know, working with different people. And, you know, not only USDA has money, FSA, but there are multiple different areas of sources of money. Again, it wouldn't be in the purview of a farmer, but other people in the technical area know these, and so we can help find that money and try to bring it in, and bring it to the department and let them figure out how to allocate it. Personally, I think the department needs to have a 50 million line of credit that they can lend out, which is one of my ideas. Guess we're leaving, huh? 12 seconds. See y'all. See you on the other side.
Thank you all so much.
And how did everybody do in their groups? The conversation sounded amazing. I'm sure it wasn't enough time, so.
There was a, you know, when you go through and you see all the comments that people made on each of those topics, there's a lot.
And that's okay. You know, we're taking this, we're compiling the topics that are hit the most, you know, repeated, these are issues, these are issues, these are issues. There's also studies that we can look at, you know, these conversations have been going on for decades, and it's a lot of the same stuff that have been issues for decades. So it's just, you know, taking that information as you guys are, you know, representatives of the ag sector coming from different islands and backgrounds and sectors, and putting forward, these are the things that we would see make the most impact. And we'll probably put forward around 15. So we'll put ample things forward as priorities to get community feedback on them. But it's just, you know, making that initial jump. A lot of this stuff is just, okay, yeah, it might not be perfect, but we have to move forward, you know? So that's, I know it's a big task to go through all those comments and, you know, think about what would make the most impact, because there's just so much needed. But it's okay. This is how we get started, and it's just if we get even 5 things that make huge impacts, that's better than we are doing today. So, you know, it's baby steps towards a really large change that's going to help a lot of people.
Have you thought of using like the word cloud apps or any of those little programs for distilling the comments?
So did you see Stacy? She sent out the word clouds from all of them. But what it does is it takes all of the words used, so it doesn't really get the full gist of ideas, which is kind of hard to work with.
Right, okay.
But that's kind of why I wanted you guys to go over the comments during the 2-week break. And this is we're not deciding today, these are the top 10 priorities. So we're going to have more time to work on this because the strategic plan is the second largest portion of this process. So basically these first 6 months, we've been working on legislation issues, right? On the language to do legislation. These next 6 months to December is going to be what we're working on for the strategic plan. So we have time. And then the budget from the strategic plan will just be for the first year. And that will be pretty, not super easy to nail down, but easier to nail down than the actual priorities and legislation part of it. So don't feel too intimidated. Okay, which group wants to start first?
I gotta go. Bye.
Okay. I'm gonna nominate William. Can your group go first? You don't necessarily have to speak, but if you can just list it, or if you want to share your screen and input that into that sheet that we had the percentage rate so everybody can see it.
Whoa.
I'm mute, William. William, you're muted.
Lauren did the notes for us, so she has the ability to share the screen or however.
I can add them into the document. Do you want to go through the notes? They're also posted in the chat right now. If you would like to present them, William.
I wouldn't know how to get in and out of that stuff. It's beyond my
No worries.
ability. But we talked about some on a farm and some on a farm. I just want a farm. I cannot do this crap.
We did talk about that.
Okay, I can share my screen if you want to. Do you want to copy, or I can copy and paste them real quick?
Oh, here, I got it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Oops. Oh, here it's only, I requested edit access.
Does it not give you edit access? I'm sorry.
You know what, let me log on. I think I'm on the wrong Google. Here, I think maybe I can edit now. Or I don't know. Jamie Ronzella was our facilitator basically, but the top priorities we mentioned were water availability, balancing the natural flow with agriculture, with a highlight on having water storage, improving farmers' access to water with a focus on the watershed, really having the county focus on the watershed. Other primary topic that we discussed was invasive species, especially deer, which related to our conversation around the need for infrastructure. Was someone going to say something? With the infrastructure being slaughterhouse facilities for animal processing, supporting deer harvesting and slaughter that meets USDA regulations. We discussed the complications with having an inspector on site for the slaughter right now, and other infrastructure needs that were addressed were industrial composting and potentially need for a food access infrastructure for emergencies, and noting that Molokai and Lanai do not have food banks. So they have food pantries, and right now there is work being done to try to set up emergency food centers across Molokai that are accessible in case of floods. So areas that have food available for folks across the island. We also discussed institutional purchasing with a certain, mandating a certain percentage of food being local. And then we discussed the importance of research and development. So data collection and data awareness, and coordinating with existing research institutes and bodies, conducting community assessments. And we concluded by discussing the importance of access to grants and available money. So the importance of blanket grants that the county might file and allow farmers to hurry up and apply collectively for funding, advocating to get funding for, or more funds for local use, for local ag, establishing a database and maybe a pipeline for farmers to access available resources. And this can all be supported by the grant writer on staff to provide technical assistance. Did anyone else have anything from group one want to share anything else?
Well done, you hired.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys did great.
Okay, who wants to present from group 2? If you're able, do you want to add yours into this too? Or if you want to copy and paste it into the chat, I can add it.
We actually did not really write notes down in a digital format. I can, hold this up, right? That works, old school. But
Okay.
group 1 hit a lot of the same components that we were talking about. In terms of things like infrastructure, top priorities would have to be reservoirs and a slaughterhouse. And when you get to the invasive species, we all agreed that the deer are a huge, huge problem. And when you talk about the timing, saying something that the department could work on in the first 5 years, the timing with respect to the deer is critical from that perspective, because if nothing's really done in the next 5 years, a lot of the ranchers are going to be done. And if the slaughterhouse situation is not updated or upgraded, that same problem. We talked a little bit about ozone generation as something that could either be under research and development or under invasives, whether or not having some sort of ozone treatment on containers at the docks would be a way of limiting the introduction of invasive species. Because you need to come up with something that's non-toxic but effective. And I think we all agreed that the industrial compost or some sort of large-scale compost operation that's available to food growers is essential moving forward. And that's something that really needs to be addressed in the next 5 years. Because in the next 5 years, Farmer Jerry's going to turn 70, and I'm not going to be hauling a pickup truck load of dead deer and food waste like I am today. Was there anything else, group 2 people, that I missed in this somewhat rambling summary?
What about the education?
Yes, maybe Lane would jump on that.
Sure. So under education, we spoke about P20. P20 was initiated in 2015 through a state resolution, state legislature resolution, and it's still in operation. So it's going to carry into the next 5 years. And so P20 means that you weave You weave a thread of agriculture science learning all the way from preschool to post-high school. And that is an opportunity all of our students have. And in addition to that, COVID-19 has brought another dimension to education. It's the dimension of reaching out to children through their ohana. YMCA is a classic example of that. Big program happening there. Big Brothers Big Sisters, big program happening there. And Imua Discovery, which is a preschool and early childhood education. Imua Discovery Gardens, which is on the land that was donated by the Pandi Yokouchi Foundation. There's 6 acres in Wailuku. So those are all examples of the involvement of the children and their ohana in learning about the land. And I forgot to say, but it should be in there. All of this is based on Ike, Hawaii, and Malama Aina. So I would like to see those words in there, please. Ike, Hawaii, and Malama Aina, please.
And Jennifer, a couple of things that I gleaned from the comments that are relevant to markets and distribution was that everyone seemed to, or quite a few people seem to think that the Maui Food Hub and distribution facilities like that have been really successful and should be definitely maintained and expanded. And one comment that was in the comments that people made under workforce development was on-farm housing. And that's something that needs to be looked at with the planning department to figure out ways for farmers to live on their land and for farmers, apprentices, and employees to live on the land too, because I think that makes it much more tractable to be a successful farmer if your employees can actually have a place to live that's not going to cost them an arm and a leg and other body parts. And that would be something that the Department of Agriculture could do in collaboration with the planning department.
Did I get all your things? Am I missing any?
So Ken, didn't you mention something about a workforce coordinator that we used to have? And was that through DLIR, Department of Labor and Industrial Relations? Is Ken out there?
I think so, but it's a statewide program, so
Yeah.
every county has a workforce coordinator,
Yeah,
and they
'cause I
do
think
meet.
I met the one at UH Maui College a couple of years ago.
So they work with the college to develop classes to assist with labor training.
Uh-huh.
And they have a lot of companies that are part of the group.
So we'd want to go back and find out where that is right now and help to revive it if we need to.
It's still there.
Good,
Leah Yen is the coordinator.
great.
Okay, are we done with group 2?
I think so.
Okay, so based on these, hearing from each other's group, is there anything that you guys feel we should add in that you're seeing? or that sparked anything since you're not in the groups that you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, but I think we should expand or add. Is there anything else combined additional that we want to add in there?
You know, Jen, I don't know how you're gonna do this, but when you really think about it, almost everything is like super important. And prioritizing is hard if they're gonna neglect, you know, only hit the top 3 and neglect the rest. I mean, they're all really, really critical things right now. I don't know how we gotta get that message to them.
You know, a lot of the feedback that I got were for the areas of need were like, these are all super important. How on earth could we prioritize them? And the reality is that they all need to be addressed. And I think, you know, we can see that everybody's pretty much in agreement on that. They all need to be addressed. However, you know, it's always scary to put one foot in front of the other when you're starting a new journey. But if we can get the community to agree on even just 5 things that would make the most impact, which I really do think that we can get the community agreement on that, it's going to make a huge difference. And getting those 5 things started will start us off on a good note. It will build confidence. It will start with the community building and collaboration. We already have a lot of community partners and funders that are, you know, looking for things to fund. So even if the department can't address all of these things right away, it gets the ball rolling. So if we put out 15 things and then the strategic plan, we're like, feasibly in the first year, we can only do 4 of these. And in the first 5 years, we can actually really only tackle maybe 7, but there's 15 that really need to be addressed. That's where community partners can step in and say, look, we can help fund that. We can work with these groups and we can get that going. So, you know, it's just putting this out there. You know, we're basically manifesting what we want for this, you know, sector. And it's completely doable because all of these things are tangible and realistic and needed. And they'll have a lot of support. So don't worry about on how or who or what. Let's just focus on putting that out there on what do we actually want that's going to make the most impact. And then naturally that will progress and it will happen. I just don't want you to get stuck on the how, where, what, and who, and, you know, because then that makes it really hard to move forward. It becomes kind of paralyzing. It will happen. And all of these things in time will be addressed. And I think, you know, the department will have the capability to make huge impacts within our ag sector. So let's just focus on, you know, trying to find those like top 10 or 15 priorities to put out to the community to make sure, yes, they're in agreement with them. And then, you know, we'll just take it each step at a time. So I'm going to leave this open. I'm also going to put this out to the bigger group, these issues, in the follow-up email, and then also put out the feedback for the percentages to see if the larger group agrees with moving forward with that. We'll have 2 more weeks to just kind of start, you know, brain dumping, you know, initiatives, programs, capital improvement projects. But this is just to kind of start the conversation, just like we did with the areas of need. You know, so this is starting the conversation. This is what the group came up with. These are the issues. Now let's get more on there and then we'll go back in and kind of narrow it down and then we'll put that out to the community. Sorry, there's a chat.
Jennifer,
Yes.
I needed to apologize to you and the 12 people that were listening. I want you to know that I'm going to call Brother Micah today or tomorrow. Forgive me if I was a little pushy or rude or obnoxious. Invasive species is a big deal to me. And our family took a lot of crap when we fought that Kahului Airport runway extension. But I'm very grateful this evening to have listened to Mr. Yamamoto say how the mayor stopped the hunters from hunting at the ag park. We can do that today, Jennifer. You tell Mr. Senesi, Manny said, go to the mayor and tell him, allow hunters to go back, otherwise I will. And then number two, it's nice to see Len talk about what's happening in our schools, the collaboration, with Uncle Pundi, his foundation and the like. It's very nice. And then to Uncle Farmer Jerry, as I mentioned in our private group, I was there for the blessing of Kahapau, reservoirs and many other. And I'm gonna go double check, Uncle Jerry. You mentioned how it was federally funded and it was meant for the ag industry. And I thank you for sharing that kind of stuff, because it seems like a lot of the institutional knowledge, the memory is being lost. And I'm really tired of having to regurgitate 40 years back for people that didn't do their homework. And not those of you here on the line, but a lot of outside people. And so, Jennifer, I thank you for always inviting me, keeping the invitation open. But those of you who are farmers, I grew up with Auntie Gladys at that slaughterhouse. So when I hear people talk about slaughterhouse, I love it. The decoy. So anyway, Jennifer, thank you. And once again, forgive me for being rough on Micah. I wanted to create a safe space for him. And if I didn't, I will apologize to him myself tomorrow, okay?
I really appreciate you saying that. That was one of the ground rules, was being respectful, but also the ground rule was understanding that people are passionate and have been through a lot of trauma in this area. So we all understand, those emotions and that passion, and we're grateful for it. And we're so thankful, that you're seeing ways to be more communicative in a more collaborative way. And, I thank you for that. So that's amazing. I think you guys are all just phenomenal human beings that have done so much for the ag sector. As always, I'm super grateful, for these meetings and all of the education and input that I receive, as well as I'm sure you guys are all, grateful for the education that you guys are getting on this and ability to, share your EK as well. So I think we will wrap up unless anybody has anything else. I'm going to compile into an email for the larger group. Keep thinking about, top 15, top 10 priorities, put those in there. I can resend out this link too, so that they can just be added. We'll do another brain dump and then, kind of refine it and go through. Also, please don't forget to share the second survey. The first email I sent out, some of the links didn't copy properly. So there's a second email that came out pretty much right after that with the correct links. So make sure you use the correct links. I apologize for it not copying correctly and messing that up, but hopefully it didn't go out to the public. So I'm going to share that on social media. Megan has agreed to do another radio ad. So we'll do a radio ad, and then there is the embed links and HTML for anybody that wants to put on their organization's website or share through their associations or community groups too. If anybody has any questions on that, please feel free to contact me, and I'll do my best to help navigate that as well. I will stay on afterwards, as always, to talk with anybody that needs. But unless anybody has anything else, I will let you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for all that you do and for another wonderful meeting.
Thank you, Jen. How much does those radio ads cost?
I don't know. She didn't tell me. She's just using Kukulani Super funding to help spread the word about the surveys. So it's really sweet of her, but I don't know how much they cost. I know that CGC ran one ad on a radio station for a month and it cost us over $500. So it's not cheap.
Yeah, Jennifer, yeah, you can do it as a PSA. And several of the radios will do that for free. You have to ask specific group and a couple other radios that you want to do a PSA, and they should be free.
Oh, a PSA. Okay.
Public service announcement.
Okay, I will contact the Pacific Media Group unless somebody has a specific contact with them that they are buddy with.
I have two if you don't get through.
Okay.
But they have actual time allocated to do PSAs. They're required.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. The more feedback we get, and I kept both surveys open on the website too, so they can go back and take the first survey or the second survey, and we'll just keep them open to get as much community feedback as possible.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you all. Thanks, Jennifer. Great job.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jennifer. Catch you next time. See y'all.
Yes, it is. Right.